Hey guys, Broden. Why do I keep saying hey guys? It doesn't matter. But look, it's episode 14. We've got Andy Dowling, podcaster extraordinaire and bass player for the legendary metal band Lord. Dungeon, they used to be called. I used to love them when they were Dungeon, and I still love them when they're Lord. But Andy, what are we talking about today, mate?
Podcast. Lots of podcasting. We talk about starting them, not finishing them, never stopping, and lots of interesting stories, weird characters, and everything in between.
Enjoy the show, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the Flow State podcast and enjoy.
Mr. Andy Dowling, how you going, mate?
Yeah, good. Guys, yourselves?
Good, thanks, mate.
Yeah, good.
Very
Can't
good.
complain.
What room are you in right now?
I'm in my little office / second bedroom / junk room / hoarding. Yeah, hoarding room. A bit of everything's in here.
That's great.
This is where the magic happens.
If this was your episode of Cribs, no doubt.
Yeah. Let's do a tour.
How long have you been in this game, my friend? Because we've obviously, taken on the mantle of you're a bit of a senior member of the Australian podcasting scene, I suppose, these days. So why the fuck did you choose to do this? I mean, obviously you have a daytime job, but why did you want to get in here?
Yeah, I think. Oh man, it sounds weird being like one of the elder statesmen in podcasting now. It's in Australia, it's kind of weird because even after all these years, I'm still trying to convince people to do it, and I'm surprised that people are still sort of sitting on the fence about it. I think every musician, every comedian, just anyone who's got a story, basically anybody should have a podcast. So it's easy as hell to do it. So but yeah, for me, I don't know, 5 years ago, I think I started, and my band Lord, it's been around for a while, and we were in a bit of a lull at that point in time where we weren't doing a lot. We weren't recording, weren't writing, weren't touring. And I had just one of those moments where it was just a very slow day, and I thought, man, what's going to happen to me when the band stops? Like, I'm not going to be Andy from Lord. I'm just going to be Andy. And I had this big identity crisis, and I'm like, oh, what will I do with my spare time? Like, I'm just going to be this average Joe again, which, in hindsight wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But I went through this whole crisis, and mind you, it was around my sort of 30, 31 sort of time that most people around that age go through a bit of an early life crisis. But I started listening to podcasts, and I think just one day I was just driving to work or something like that. And I thought, this sounds pretty cool. Like, I think I could probably do something like this. And it was just a way to fill in the time and just give it a shot. And I thought it'd be a sneaky way to do a bit of cross promotion for the band as well. Like, people would start listening to me because they listened to the band, or they discovered me first and then the band. Didn't quite work out that way to begin with. It was pretty much tumbleweeds for the first, first couple of years doing the podcast. But eventually it sort of built up and got momentum. And 5 odd years later, and a bunch of different shows. But my main one, Andy Social's been going pretty much non-stop for the most part for all that time. And and here I am talking to you guys now.
You've got hundreds of episodes of Andy Social. I'm just actually flipping over there so I can see what the latest episode of that is. Hang on, I really want to find out this. So you're up to episode 216, dude. That's out of control. How did you did you ever have a week where you go, no, fuck it, I don't want to do one?
Oh yeah, yesterday. Yeah, like I've got one that comes out. I've got one that comes out every Tuesday morning, which is just like a ranty episode that I just talk shit, which has been quite good for me, especially over the last few weeks of just being sort of locked down and not doing a great deal. And then later in the week on Thursday nights, I have my usual guest episode that comes out. But yeah, I think I've learnt a lot of self-development skills over the years of doing podcasting, just showing up. Even though it feels like shit, doesn't feel right, you just keep doing it. It's the discipline of the whole process, and it rewards you over time. But for me, I got really lucky this year. I mean, when I kicked back off for this year, I bulk recorded a whole stack of episodes. So I'm still recorded up until the beginning of May, or the second week of May. And I've just been doing my own sort of ranty podcasts each week just to keep that other one going. But so I've been quite lucky. Otherwise, I think I'd be stressing a little bit at the moment, trying to well, not so much pin people down, because I think people have got the time, but also, I think you guys will probably find that the topics that people lean into is what's going on in the world at the moment, and I'm at home, I'm going crazy, and some of that's good, but also it can get a bit tiresome as well, because I'm like everyone's going through the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Andy, you were saying that the podcasting is something that you would encourage everyone to go through because, as you said, it is kind of easy to do it, and anyone really can have a crack at it. I sat on the fence for about probably 4 or 5 years, and I'm really actually putting a lot of effort into the one that Broden and I are doing now. And I can honestly say I've never had more fun or never enjoyed a personal project as much as creating a podcast. And we've only just started having guests on, like Anthony Koutafidis. I'm an AFL fan. He's my favourite player for years. It was just great to be able to chat and interview basically for an hour someone that you looked up to for so long. And yeah, it really is a good platform, and you can do it from the comfort. I'm doing it from my office here at home, so
It's a spit out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so in reach, you can just do it all yourself. And yeah, I really, really do love the podcast platform.
I think no doubt the two of you would probably agree with me, like especially after you've had a conversation with somebody, and it can be somebody you never thought you'd ever have the opportunity to speak to, or it could just be a mate, and you end that episode, that interview or that conversation, and you just got this like adrenaline rush, and you just like you're fired up from it, even if you're just talking shit for an hour.
Yeah.
It's just like this thing that it's so funny because we don't do it as much as we used to. Like we're all probably of the age where we're a little bit pre-internet, and you pick up the home phone and you just stand around at the sort of the door archway, and you didn't have a cordless or anything like that. You try to talk to your mate on the phone, and that whole sort of vibe disappeared for quite some time. And I think podcasting, I think that's why people really identify with it and connect with it and enjoy it. And it's so popular because you sit in and you listen to people talk, and it's just so normal.
I'd like to joke that. So I like to joke that podcasting is a perfect avenue for people that don't have friends. You can sit around and listen to other people talk.
Yeah, well, to some extent, that is exactly like some people might use podcasts for that reason too, I reckon. But yeah, it's the mostly unedited conversation as well that I think is really good. It's just no cut. It's just a conversation. There's no ad breaks, generally speaking. It's just uninterrupted fun.
Yeah, and I think if you're not used to it to begin with, it's quite daunting and a little bit stressful. And I mean, I still get a little bit of anxiety before I start one with somebody, especially if I don't know them. Or actually, to be honest, the people that I know are probably stressed out more because you're trying to have a natural conversation with somebody that you've got a relationship with, but at the same time, it's not natural because you're recording it, and then you're trying to just get something going, and it's just you're overthinking everything. But
because you don't get the opportunity to have those when you have a normal conversation with somebody, you get a lot of this. And so, did you hear what Jim's doing? And you don't do that on these. You've got to, it's different. You never speak to someone on a podcast the way that you really would. And the first 10 episodes Cody and I did were just Cody and I sitting around in front of a picture of Conor McGregor. You know what I mean? Just having a chat. And they were, like you say about the adrenaline thing, even after we would sit around and just talk about shit that most of the stuff we don't know about each other, but some of the stuff we do. But even after that, we're just like, fuck yeah, this episode's going to be great. I can't wait for people to see it.
Yeah.
It's so good. And it's something that you never quite get used to in a good way. I think you always go into a new conversation with somebody where you know that you have to be fully attentive to what's going on. You have to be focused. You can't have your phone in your hand. You can't be sort of doing multitasking or anything like that. You have to be switched on, and it really improves your listening skills and your care factor. I mean, it's just, I've always seen myself as sort of this one-way talking piece for most of my life. You just, as long as people can hear me, I don't really care. And once you're doing a podcast, you can't afford to do that. I mean, I still ramble like I'm doing right now, but you have to get that other person engaged, and that means asking questions and listening and responding to what they say.
I have no response to that. I wasn't listening. Sorry.
I was waiting for that.
But Andy, so I've got a couple of personal favorite episodes of yours, but after interviewing not only on Antisocial, but on Nod to the Old School and on Self Starter, like, give me a couple of your favorites, I suppose. I'm interested in your favorite self-starter episode, actually, because those are episodes where you're talking to people who are beginning a career in business. You know what I mean? These guys want to start something and succeed in that. Do you have a favorite episode of each of those different podcasts that you've done?
Yeah, self-starter is a tough one, because I think the whole process for that for me was there was this underlying feeling of anxiety through the whole thing. I've never been more outside my comfort zone with those people, because I had nothing in common with these people whatsoever. There was nothing just to latch onto and say, hey, we both like music, or we both sort of come from the same sort of demographic or anything like that. And most of these people have never heard of a podcast before. So for them, they're a little bit skeptical of the time that they were giving me. And what's the catch? Like, they're not paying for this. And, just very old school. And a lot of it was regional based as well. So it was tough. And so the whole way through, in some of the episodes, you can definitely sense a little bit of tension, like just in trying to get them to come out of their shell and get used to being, because they were on alert as well, because they knew they were being recorded. So they were overthinking what they were saying as well.
Trying not to give away all the business secrets.
Oh yeah, thinking. Yeah, it was just like a lot of crazy stuff, and a lot of people I just could not convince to even get on the podcast at all, because they just didn't understand what I was trying to do. They thought there was more to it, or I was going to upsell them something at the end of it, or what? Maybe I should have. Maybe
that's what happens when you're in business. You get sus of other people because you're supposed to be the biggest fucking shark in the room, right?
Yeah, that's right. But I think I'm just trying to think off the top of my head really quickly. Like, so one of the ones that came to mind was actually there's one of the early ones was a guy who runs a nursery in Bomaderry, where I was living for a few years, and he just started it on his own, and it's a pretty sort of out there nursery, given the community, very regional, lots of bright colours. He uses shipping containers, and it was called Grow Hard, and it had like these innuendos, and really young guy, like in his early 20s, very entrepreneurial, and a great chat, really, really exciting guy when you talk to him. And after we finished recording, the episode was really good, and he gave a lot of insight as to how he got it off the ground. But afterwards, he was telling me about all these big schemes that he had. He was going to buy up and all this property and land. He's going to have all these developments, and he's going to basically shake the town up. And the town's going to hate him, but he's just going to make it happen, and he's going to be the mover and the shaker. Anyway, about a year later, he didn't grow anything. He sold the nursery, hoping he could sell the business to somebody else, but no one wanted the business, so he ended up just selling the entire thing. And now it's like this overgrown plot of land that's just getting neglected. And I think maybe he's becoming a bit of a tycoon in the property world, but he's gone very quiet. But I've got a feeling he'll pop up again. So there's lots of interesting stories that sort of run alongside a lot of those episodes. So maybe down the track, as I'm talking now, I'm having these ideas. Maybe I can do little updates or little check-ins with these people and see, where are they now? Have they crashed and burned? Are they still alive?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely different vibe with all of that. Just a different world, and definitely built up my own skills of having to try and win people over and pitch a concept, like something to them, and get them on side, which is really difficult and very uncomfortable for me. Not to the old school. Probably the best one I did out of that was David Ellefson from Megadeth. Just one I was like, that's my all-time favorite metal band, and just a super nice guy. And there was one of those guests on my list of people that I was going to contact that I just thought it's going to be a long shot. And he just came back to me straight away and said, yep, we'll lock it in. We'll try and work out a time. And he sat down, and it was just super casual, and the way that he puts himself out there is super laid back and down to earth anyway. But just being able to connect and talk to him was exactly the same as well. So he ended up sharing all these fantastic stories and just stuff that I don't know. I've never heard the stories before, so they kind of sound like they were very organic with me, and certainly got me excited, and people listening seem to enjoy it as well. And then antisocial, oh man, like that's tough because 200 plus episodes. There's heaps. They're like children now, so you don't want to show favoritism to any in particular. But a guy called Rusty Young, he wrote the book Marching Powder, and another book called Columbiano. And Marching Powder was a non-fiction book that he wrote about when he lived in a Bolivian jail for 12 months. He went in as a tourist. They had a section of the prison that was open for tourism. So you go in there and a bit of shock value and meet some of the prisoners. And he made friends with this English guy who had been convicted for drugs, and he'd been, I don't know, like a 20 plus year sentence or whatever. And he managed to bribe his way into the prison and lived there for 12 months and just did a whole book on it and photos and everything. And it's just absolutely incredible. And he ended up, after that, and putting the book out, living in Colombia, working with the vigilante and US, I can't remember what they are, but sort of these very informal US military soldiers that are sort of fighting the drug cartels and all the child soldiers and everything. And he wrote another book. And just an incredible guy. And I got to meet him and hang out in North Sydney and just sit around shooting shit for an hour, and just an incredible dude. But another one outside my comfort zone. Had nothing to connect with him, nothing in common whatsoever. But I just tried to be as curious as possible and make him feel that he had something important to tell, which he certainly did. So that wasn't hard at all.
You definitely committed to this situation. I remember you did a podcast with a friend and bandmate of mine, Mr. Brett Garsed, who famously plays with John Farnham, and I told him about you guys ages ago with Playing to Win, your version of Playing to Win, and also the tour. I was wearing the tour T-shirt, and he's like, "Oh, Playing to Win, we do that." And I said, "Yeah, well, these guys organised an entire tour around your tour, hoping that John would come to one of your shows." And then he said to me, I had like an interview, some guy from, out of town came and did an interview at my house. I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I see it pop up as a fucking Andy episode. I'm like, Brett, why didn't you tell me? It's like, that's Andy. But did you just literally fly down just to do that episode?
It worked out. I'd like to say yes, but I wasn't that dedicated. I did have some other stuff in Melbourne that weekend, and I just crossed my fingers hoping that Brett would be available sort of the day before. And he was, but I was prepared. If I had no other option, I'd just go down just for him. Like, he was just one of those guys who's.
I knew you had to have him.
Oh yeah, man. Like, he's iconic. He's iconic.
For anyone who doesn't know about Andy, is a freak for John Farnham, like a guys from. Mark's a bit of a Farnham fan too, right? Or is he as hard?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, probably not as hard as me, but he's certainly up there. But my strategy now is I've been trying to hit up John Farnham through Glenn Wheatley for years. And I know it's not going to happen because he just doesn't do interviews. Like, if he's going to do mine, then he's probably going to shit on a lot of other people that he's turned down over the years. He doesn't even do that much mainstream at all. So
just get Glenn Wheatley.
Well, I've tried him as well, but I think I tried him after I'd already had a few stabs at John, and I think he probably got a bit offended, thinking he was a second option, which he was, but still, it's Glenn Wheatley. But yeah, every 6 months or so, I check in and just say, hey, how you going, blah blah blah, and John's got an upcoming tour, but now I'm starting to think I might just hit up everybody that John's ever associated with or played with, and I'll just go all around him to eventually everyone will say, oh yeah, Andy, he seems all right, and then eventually go, stuff it, I'll have a chat to him.
Well, you actually you mentioned this in one of your very early rambling with Andy. I can't remember what they call them. They're just talking episodes where you're in your car and you tell the story about how you almost, like, you were within touching distance of John, but you decided against it at the last minute to talk to him.
Yeah. I think that's when I first started the Antisocial podcast. I was still trying to work out what I was doing. So when I was still struggling to get up the courage to contact people to be guests on the podcast, I still wanted to keep the podcast going. So when I had stories in my head or things that I've done, I'd try to do an episode and share a story. And so there's a lot of odd stuff in the first probably 20 or 30 episodes of the podcast. But yeah, I did an episode about how I went and saw John Farnham and Olivia Newton-John play in Sydney. And a friend of mine, a good friend, is good friends with one of John Farnham's backing singers. And so we got tickets to the show, and then we got these backstage passes after the show. And it was the last show of their tour. And it was also, I think, John's wife's birthday as well, which we didn't know until right at the end. But after the show, we went backstage, and there was a private little function room, and the whole band was in there. All these celebrities. I was chatting to one of the, I can't remember her name. I should know, but she was one of the actresses in Neighbours, and there's a few other people in there. Like, just people, like, I'm looking around going, what are you doing here? This is really odd. And I'm just standing around chatting to all these people, and then John comes into the room. Like, the whole band was already there, but John comes into the room, and just all attention's on him. He's like they always say, the man of the hour, you know. And he's just so gracious, and he's chatting to everybody. But he's got his own little pocket, and his wife was there, and it was his wife's birthday, and so they, you know, had a cake and everything. And this episode where I was sort of recalling all this was just me sort of struggling with being so close to like this guy who I've just idolized, this amazing, iconic singer, and just going, this doesn't feel right. Like, there's nothing I can say at the moment. I can't go up to this guy and just, because suddenly I'll break down what this whole vibe is. This is his inner circle. This is his safe place. And for me to go up and say, oh, I'm a big fan, it's like, it'll almost be like, what's this guy doing here? You know? And instead you break
no
break
fucking
that
fans.
yeah. And I was so scared. Like, I've met people in the past who I've really sort of looked up to and enjoyed, like, music, etc. And then I've met them in person and kind of gone, oh, you know, maybe got them on a bad day, and it's a little bit tainted. And I was just worried that maybe I just hit him at the wrong place, wrong time. And so I just thought, there's too many things going on in my head to say no. And so I just sat back with a drink and chatted to friends and just glanced over every once in a while going, oh, well, it's John.
That's great, man.
You got the opportunity to play with Carmine and Vinnie. That's Carmine Appice and Vinnie Appice. For some reason, they have the same last name pronounced two different ways. How did you stumble across that? Was it Mike, Toe Hider Mike? Did he hook that up, or how did that come about?
Oh, that's a really odd one, because so what happened was Hardline Touring put on the tour, and what he Doug Dalton, who's the guy behind Hardline, he had brought out a number of different singers and artists in the past, like Paul Di'Anno, Ripper Owens, and instead of bringing out a full band, he would just bring the singer out, and then he would have a backing band, an Australian backing band, that would just play the songs and just bring down the costs and make it more viable. And so it's going to be a similar thing to Carmine and Vinnie, both iconic drummers, both brothers, played in all these amazing bands, everything from Vanilla Fudge and Custard and Aussie and Dio and Sabbath and all sorts of stuff. But he needed a guitarist and a bass player, and so he hit me up first, and then I think I suggested Mike afterwards. And Mike's a massive Dio fan. Mike and I did a Dio tribute show in Melbourne years and years ago, and just absolutely incredible. And he's a talented guy. And so I just said to Doug, okay, you got to get Mike. Like, he's shit hot on guitar and he knows his stuff. And so part of this was their PR campaign leading up to it. I had the podcast. So I said to Doug, hey man, like, you know, give them my details and I'll have a chat to them. So I did one with Mike, of course, and then I did one with Vinnie and Carmine. And it was, I mean, they're kind of awkward episodes, especially Carmine. Like, I think when I was talking to Carmine, I had to do a bit of editing because he was in the car going through the drugstore, getting some prescription drugs or something like that. And so he was sort of multitasking and he was sort of half listening to what I was saying. And I don't think he even realised that I was going to be playing in his band in Australia.
No, I was just going to say, I remember the moment where he realised, oh, you're the bass player. Oh, well, listen, here's what I'll tell you. Just don't worry about what we're doing. You play on the beat. We'll come back around to what we're doing.
Yeah, it was so awkward. I was already stressing at the beginning of it. But anyway, what ended up happening was the tour never went ahead. So it ended up getting cancelled. I think it might have been ticket sales or something like that. I don't think they actually admitted what it was. But they said, oh, we'll look at rescheduling sometime down the track. It just never happened. And I don't think it was a terribly successful project for them. It was called Drum Wars or something like that. So it was the two of them on stage having drum battles, which, you know, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a drummer, so
you wouldn't want to see that.
But
bass solo battles. Wow, let's go to that. Sorry,
Spinal Tap. Yeah, I don't know. But so it sucked that it didn't happen. But out of it, the silver lining was I still got to have these amazing chats with these guys. They got to share some great stories with me, and for me in my head, I'm always talking about getting in front of people and just people remembering who I am and my name, and you never know, like paths might cross later on, and Andy just pops up in conversation, and they might not connect the dots initially, but the name might be enough to sort of jog the memory, and I don't know. But either way, I got entertained, and Broden, from what you said, it sounded like you got a bit entertained from at least Carmine's chat.
It was a ripper, man. It was very funny. I remember. I think it was around Christmas one year that I think that one came out. Would that be about right? Yeah. So I was going out to the family farm at the time to do some, stuff. I was coming home on Boxing Day or something like that, and I had a listen to that, and it was definitely gave me a giggle. So,
well, I've had a lot like that over the years where, just trying to build up rapport with people that probably have done a lot of interviews in the past, and they're already in their program state of how I respond to these types of things. So they've already got their set of stories and responses and things already pre-programmed in their heads. But it's subconscious. It's just there, and you're trying to break through that. And there's been plenty of awkward moments over the years. I couldn't even begin to start thinking about what all of them were, but there's been lots of them where I've had no prior connection with somebody, and I've had to try and build something really quickly and get them over the line. And I try not to do a lot of the press stuff. So when bands are coming out for a tour or they get a new album and things like that, I've got a lot of friends that work in PR, great guys, and they're always offering me interviews, and I can't do them. I just because you're usually one of 20 people on the phone day, the press day, and you probably got about 15, 20 minutes, and you'll probably and if you're at the start, then you've got to rush really quickly to build rapport and get some really good candid responses. Or if you're at the end of it, then they're over it, and you've got to win them over again. And it's just, I've tried a couple of them and they just don't quite hit. So I try to hit people up outside of that, which makes it harder because they're not always as responsive because they're not getting something out of it, which I understand. But it's just one of the many challenges that you have with podcasting.
Andy, you were talking about getting into the subconscious of people and stuff like that. When you're talking to people, there's one episode that really sticks out for me, and we did bring this up on episode 10, which was, I've brought this up with everybody because it's my favorite episode. It's where I tell my personal alien abduction story and also share my UFO found footage that I took myself. But that Cooked episode where you talk to that guy from Melbourne.
Yeah.
What's the name of the dude in the episode? Because I was trying to find it before, but there's 200 episodes to go through.
I can't remember the number. And I feel so weird about even saying the guy's name. Peter Maxwell Slattery, like how I hesitate. But,
that's right. Like Voldemort, he'll show up behind you and abduct you.
It was just, that's such a weird one for me because somebody recommended him to me, but when I looked him up and started reading his website, I thought that the reason why he was being recommended to me was because he's a cooked unit. And so I'm like, okay, all right, cool. And then I realized that the guy who actually recommended him to me was probably a cooked unit himself and actually really, really idolized this guy and thought that, he's a really interesting guy and he needs to continue to spread the word, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. You need your platform.
And I didn't quite work it out to begin with, but I was really sort of on the fence about having him on because I just like I love this kind of stuff from a skeptic point of view and taking the piss, but at the same time I have no time for it. I'm so anti all this kind of stuff, all the woo woo. I'm anti-religion. I'm everything, and I try to pipe it down as much as I can because to each their own to a degree, as long as you're not hurting other people or influencing. Anyway. So I was really sort of a bit reluctant about having him on because I didn't really want to give this a voice, like give him a voice on it. But at the same time, I thought if I go in and just, I don't know. I mean, even now, like sort of thinking back, I go, I don't know if I handled it best. But I tried to just be curious without sort of agreeing with him. But at the same time, trying not to catch him out and go, you're a loony,
What was it? What was his thing? What was he spouting?
Well, he had a few different things, but more. I think, long story short, I should go back and listen to it because it is quite entertaining. He, I think, when he was a teenager or something like that, he was visited at night by an alien, some sort of being, and then ever since then he's had ongoing encounters with these extraterrestrial beings. And he has these gatherings with lots of other people, and they're able to summon these beings to be there. Part of it's not sort of like ghosts or anything like that. It's like aliens, and he's really deep into the supernatural world where he's got a lot of people. He's got a lot of people that follow him. He's got some really strong connections with these really out there people in the US. And I think he makes some decent money off it. So he's done documentaries. He's written books.
That's dangerous.
I think part of it, yeah. And I think part of it, I was really fascinated with him was because, myself started ahead. I'm going, man, this guy's so entrepreneurial. Like he's writing all these books, he's doing documentaries, he's content driven. And I was just like, part of that was like, wow, man, like you're so busy. Like, how do you get all this done? And he was just, oh man, like I kind of gave him credit, but yeah, oh man. And his wife's like a psychic as well. And so they hold these conferences where people pay money. And I know people, after I sort of put the episode out, I know of people and people that I've met in my travels who have gone to his events and believe the things that he and his wife spout. And then I understand why when I know these people. Like I go, yeah, you would be the type of
course you do.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I love it. As soon as you say spout, it just discredits anything.
Yeah. Spout. Spouting shit.
Fuck. Yeah, I think the thing that sort of got me over the line and pushed forward was that I kept thinking that I was more important than I was, because I was thinking like, I have the social responsibility to not probably give these types of things air, like give them time. But then at the same breath, I was like, who the fuck am I? Like, no one listens to me. Like, hardly anyone listens to me. Like, why do I think I'm so special that I hold so much power? And a few people have listened to it. So,
and I think you say you don't know how you handle it. When I listened to that, I thought you handled it so well to the point where that could have been a therapy session for him. You know what I mean? Like you handled it that well that because you do your wrap ups at the end, like your intros after you've finished the episodes, right?
Yeah.
So what you said at the start of that was like, you did mention that you're very apprehensive going into this and you didn't really want to give him too much of a confirmation bias, I suppose. But I think the way that you handled that there was you didn't disagree with him because when you antagonize somebody who, and this is the thing, is it's really hard when you're talking about the abduction stuff. You can't really say that somebody's not mentally stable because they can be perfectly stable, just have this delusion sort of idea that goes on. And a lot of the time, and as this gentleman mentioned, can be triggered by some past trauma, childhood sexual abuse, etc., and stuff like that. And the gentleman mentioned that he did have some of that go on, which of course is most likely a very deep root for that type of mental hallucination behavior. But I think the way that you spoke to him in that was very, very interesting, in the way that you didn't want to disagree to antagonize, but you also didn't just accept it as, oh yeah, so you had 17 spacecrafts at your wedding, you say? Yeah, oh well, and they visit you in the daytime, and they went to Altham to your wedding, or wherever it was. Oh yep, no probs. So who's your favorite alien? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think because I overthought it quite a bit, and I was a bit apprehensive about it. I really put a bit of effort, and I try to do it. Probably don't think about it that much anymore, but for a long time there, I really made sure that when I did my intros, I tried to frame the conversation as best as I could, not so much to put an incorrect lens over it, but just to give people some context as to where my head was at going into it, or some of the extra stuff that might make a bit more sense when people refer to different things. Because sometimes, we'll talk about something where the two of us might know what we're talking about, but the listener may have no idea. So I try to use the intro to sort of frame it a little bit better and fill in the gaps where it might be reasonable to do so. But I also felt really bad for him because he, I think he was so appreciative of me giving him time to talk, and he was super, super polite, very courteous, a very nice guy, and he was just so genuine with the way he spoke to me, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, it's been years since I've listened to it, but from what I could recall, he made a few mentions to say, look, I can appreciate that, you might not believe me, and a lot of people don't believe me, but these are things that I genuinely think have happened, and blah, blah, blah. So he sort of had enough awareness to understand that, like, this conversation that we're having, I'm not necessarily agreeing with what he's saying, and so he had the reality around all that. So it kind of helped a bit, but that was an odd one. I forgot all about that.
I'd love to get your opinion on our episode with my story, because of that exact situation there, where basically what happened, I'll just give you a quick rundown. I'm Cody, I'm sure you've seen me talking about it, but basically, so I'll just give you a quick rundown of this episode 10 thing. Basically, I had this great experience where I, heard some noises, felt people walking around my bed, and then got lifted up into a ship. Had a really in-depth conversation about perception with these beings, and then they jammed something up my cornhole, put me back to bed. And then what happened was when I woke up and realized that I was dehydrated and had some sleep paralysis, and I also am often an avid, vivid lucid dreamer. So I knew that I'd had just one of my famous, awesome lucid dreams. And when you're dehydrated and you go to fart, it's like your mouth sticks together. You go, it just opens up your ass cavity like that. And it feels like something's going in there. But the thing is, I can totally see how somebody who may have had some kind of horrible experience as a kid, and this is the thing, no one is capable of talking about opening an anus maturely. I love it. It's so great.
Didn't expect that in this conversation at all.
But I can totally see how somebody who's had trauma in their life can see that as that actually happened to me because of how unimportant they've been made to feel by an abuser, and then go, there's beings from across the galaxy who have come to Smith Street, number 86 or whatever, just to talk to just me out of everyone in the whole world. You know what I mean? They want to feel special. I can totally get that, but it's also an interesting one to disagree with somebody like that because they're like, how fucking dare you discount my experiences? And it's like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. It's a tough one because I can totally, like, when I was speaking to that guy, I mean, there's so many red flags, like so many things that he said, explaining sort of his upbringing and his background, and even things that he does now, where it's like, I understand why you think the way that you think because I'm on the outside looking in. I go, I can kind of connect the dots. I mean, I don't know for sure. I mean, I'm not a psychic, but you can kind see some.
No one is. That's the truth. No. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see some links, some commonalities that sort of patterns that show up in other people of similar backgrounds and experiences. And I think he also had a few drug issues as well, and so that no doubt could have tied in with some of the things that he experienced along the way. But I mean, I've had the lucid dreaming stuff before, very odd stuff, and the sleep paralysis where you feel like someone's pinning you down and you can't move, and you feel like there's somebody on top of you, and it's just
that's Mark Furtner invading your house.
Yeah. Woken up on tour a few times with him pinning you down. Yeah,
that's right.
And I get it. I get why people feel that way. And I mean, I had an encounter when I was a kid. I'm pretty sure I've told this on the podcast a few times, but walking down the corridor of my grandmother's house and seeing my grandfather who'd passed away a few years earlier at the end of the hallway behind the door, and he saw me and hid back behind the door. And that was the bedroom that he died in. And I actually went to their house the night that he died. He died in his sleep. He had a heart attack. And I remember standing next to his bed. Like, this actually happened. He was asleep. Well, he was dead, but he just looked like he was asleep. And I was standing next to the bed saying goodbye. And it was such a weird thing. I was about 3 or 4 years old. And, but then I had that in my head. And so that was the room that he died. And the light switch was always at the end of the hallway. It was just the most ridiculous design. So you had to walk down a dark hallway to then turn on the light. So anyway, I don't get that one. And so I was always scared. I was always scared of the dark and walking towards basically the death room and where the light switch is to turn the hallway light on. And as I'm walking down the hallway, I've got so much anxiety and stress and fear that I could see anything. Like I've got and I was adamant that I saw him, and I ran back out screaming in tears. And my grandmother made a comment saying that she sees him all the time, but I mean, who knows? You know.
Fucking hell! What made you feel better? I see him.
It just validated it for me at the time, but it wasn't until years later when I got older and you start to be a little bit more rational with your thinking. You go, well, you know, I mean, I can't prove anything, but at the same time, it's probably more likely that a series of psychological things that I'd been going through at that age and being very young, that I could have seen anything. You know, that's why people have imaginary friends and all sorts of little things, you know, when they're growing up and these different experiences. So I'm quite. I definitely appreciate when people share stories like that, because I can understand it, and I understand why people may not have the rationality to sort of separate it, and people that will hold it close to them and say that it actually happened and it's a real thing. So it's always a dicey thing to have those conversations with people, that's for sure.
Very much so. But well, look, we're still talking about that episode. You know what I mean? It's one you weren't sure you're going to do, and here we are. What, a couple of years later?
The gift that keeps on giving.
It just keeps giving. I know. I'm like, I was doing the gardening when I listened to it, and then I listened to it again. I listened to it twice in the same day. I just had to. I was like, I can't believe this, because I love that shit. We both do. Cody loves that stuff as well. We're always talking about aliens. We love it.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm gonna have to share that episode. I'm gonna listen to it myself. I haven't listened to it since I put it. Well, I actually did it with him. So, yeah, I might chuck it up. Well, it is online, but I'll go and share it again. And
yeah, cool.
I imagine a lot of your early episodes that you did over the phone, I imagined I had a very distinct imagination of yourself doing these episodes with your Zoom H4, your phone plugged into it, on the bed with your feet up in the air, kind of like this. You know what I mean? Like, hi guy, like just talking like, you know, like a high school girl on the phone to her boyfriend. But this particular episode, I imagined you pretty much sitting where you are now, but with your knees closer to your chest, hugging them. Yeah, just kind of like that guy.
Fetal position.
I mean, I've done podcasts in the weirdest of places. You know, to start off with, yeah, I've got a portable device which is quite easy, and it's made it really easy to record all over the world. Like, you know, do podcasts in different places. You know, do stuff in my car. You know, on lunch breaks and things like that, or late at night to be sort of in the lounge room or in my bedroom or wherever I can find a quiet spot, you know, in a car park somewhere, in a national park sometimes, like really weird places that, whatever I can do to make sure I can reduce the amount of background noise and distraction. And it depends on the guest, you know. If I've got a mate that I've known for years and it's a very sort of loose and casual conversation, then it doesn't really matter as much. But when you've got somebody that you've had to prepare for, and maybe you're overthinking it as well, then you try to make sure that you have as little distraction as possible. And I'll have my note. I've got notebooks, piles of notebooks of notes from all the guests I've had on my podcast, and so I've kept all of them. So it's interesting to look back and see what I actually asked people about, and things that I just decided in the moment to not ask because it wasn't appropriate or just never came up. But yeah, I've had plenty of flashbacks where I'm like sitting in front of like this makeshift table, which is basically a cardboard box with the Zoom sitting on there, and a notepad and maybe a beer, you know, or being too paranoid to even drink. And so I've got like water, or maybe I'm so parched because I forgot to bring any drinks in, and I'm stressing and I'm running out of breath, and it's just, I've had every experience possible.
Well, as the podcast king, and obviously you say that you want everybody to get into podcasting, and I've given you that mantle. I know you haven't taken it. You're too humble to take the podcasting, but you're taking it today from me. Give us, so Cody and I, for example, we're here. We're a very short amount of episodes in, and we've just taken a big jump to a place we don't deserve to be in by talking to guys like, you know, Kuda, Goxie, Jimmy Crute, yourself, and moving on with some more guests to come. Did you know, well, two questions. Did you know when you did that first episode with Andrew Craig, who's now no longer with us because he's in Russia, he's still with us. But did you realize it was going to get this big? And B, what have you got to tell people like us who want to give it a crack and who are willing to push it forward?
I didn't think that it would get to the size that it has, and to be doing it this long. I've never been somebody that follows through with a lot of stuff. I'm one of these guys that has lots of ideas, and then once the intoxication of the idea starts to wear away, then I start to go, I'll find something else to get excited about. So I'm quite chuffed at myself for just following through and just continuing to do it for so many years. And yeah, the audience building and everything like that, I never thought. So lots of surprises. And to be honest, it was, to begin with, part of it was, the sneaky cross promotion, something to do, a different identity attached to me, but also just to get better at talking. You know, I was one of those guys that, you know, all my mates I'd have conversations with were usually over beers at a pub or a gig or whatever it was. And then you'd see them the following day in the street and you'd be stone cold sober, and you just awkwardly trying to have a conversation with them, and you realize that you needed a beer to sort of, you know, lose the inhibitions a little bit. And I was so upset with myself that that's what it took. And so the podcast was a bit of a tool for me to get better at just talking to people without needing any social lubricant. And so I like to think I got a bit better with that over the years. But I think the big thing that people need to think about when they're starting a podcast is that it's a long game. It's, if you're doing it to make money or to have a big, audience, you're going to be bitterly disappointed because that stuff does not come anytime soon. And I'm not really making any money. I get a little bit of money here and there that just sort of keeps the podcast floating with some of the expenses. But for the most part, it's a passion project, which I love. And obviously the audience is bigger, which is good. But what kept me going is just the thrill of being able to have another conversation with somebody, and whether it be, me being a big basketball fan growing up in the 90s, NBA and the NBL here in Australia, and me sitting in a food court in Brisbane talking to Leroy Loggins early on a Sunday morning, which is the most surreal mind fuck of a experience I've ever had. But it was so cool, and things like that. And then getting on the phone and talking for 4 hours with Jono, ex-Tabra, about life, and just going down all these different tangents and twists and turns and everything. That stuff is what makes it so fun, and that's what's kept me going. And knowing that I can keep showing up and keep doing episodes, and just the discipline and watching myself grow and get better as a person, getting different opinions, being challenged. It's all sort of, a bit sort of warm and fuzzy, but that's the stuff that keeps you going. So I think, for you guys, you hit the ground running. You've got some great guests, and I think that the good thing is don't ever stress about not getting or losing momentum with big names. I think some of the best episodes I've ever done are the people that don't have a big public profile and have an amazing story to tell, and just a great conversation with. And they're the people that a lot of people that listen to the podcast still talk about as well.
Well, here we are talking about the alien guy,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Out of nowhere. I don't
give a shit about that dickhead from Megadeth. I want to know about the alien guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Possibly he knows too much. Sorry.
Yeah, hang on. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a big thing. You guys, Cody, you said before, just this thrill to be able to talk to people that you look up to and you're a fan of, and to be able to have a candid conversation for an hour is just, it's amazing,
Yeah.
And you just get a different side of somebody, and you get a chance to sort of have a bit of your own voice as well. Although it's usually for the guest, and they get to talk and tell their story. It's an interaction, it goes both ways. And that's why I try to use the term conversation rather than interview, because interview is always like the Q&A. I've got a question, I'm going to get the answer from you, back and forth, very transactional, where conversation's just, let's just see where we go. And we'll go off on a tangent, whatever. And I'm going to share some stories, you're going to share some stories, we'll trade, we'll compare different experiences, and we'll just see where it ends up. And they're super fun, super cool.
Absolutely.
We had a chat with Mr. Aaron Gox in a previous episode. You've interviewed Goxie before?
Yeah.
Interviewed. You've had a conversation with Goxie before. So when you go to approach these people, like, do you get them all as recommendations, or do, like, with you, if you're talking to, obviously the Carmine and Vinnie thing was one thing, but when you're trying to get onto Megadeth, right? How do you just go, hey, Facebook, show me, I want Tom Araya from Slayer. And they're like, Tom is not available right now. Like, how do you contact these people?
In every way possible. So whatever works. So episode 200, I had Andrew Farris from NXS, and that was fantastic. I got to meet up with him in person and do that. And that was via a friend of mine who was at the time working for this PR company that was helping promote his albums. So it was through a very formal channel that I got put in touch with him. And I was a bit reluctant. He had to actually sell me the idea that it wouldn't be Q&A, it wouldn't be just 20 minutes. He'll do long form conversation, et cetera, et cetera. So that was really good. Yeah. And so there's been times where I've had to go through an agent or a manager or something like that. They're usually the least fun to do, because it can be a gatekeeper. But I've done Facebook Messenger. I've hit people up. I've just found their profile and flicked a message and just crossed my fingers and hope it gets through. I've done a lot of direct messages on Twitter. I've found people's email addresses. I've done the web forms on their websites. I've tried everything, and sometimes it's been a referral from somebody else who's been on the podcast. So I haven't done it for a while, and I probably should get back into the swing of it. But after I've had a conversation with somebody, and if it goes well, we build some rapport, I'll let them know when it's going to come out and talk about a few different things and just try and keep it nice and casual. And I'll say, look, by the way, if you've got anybody front of mind who you think would be really good for something like this, like anyone who'd be really keen to just, do a podcast, let me know. And so I've had people refer other guests via that person. So then I've
Pyramid
had
scheme.
a great, so yeah, that's cool. Well,
Pyramid
so.
scheme.
Yeah. So, and what credibility is that when you have somebody that they already trust recommending that person, yourself through to them? So that definitely helps break the ice a lot quicker. So yeah, I've never been sort of just try the formal path only. I'll just try everything, and as long as I'm being super respectful and courteous to them and acknowledging their time, etc., then I'll try whatever means are necessary to try and cut through the noise. And sometimes the most unexpected ways yield the greatest success. Couldn't help myself.
Speaking of cutting through the noise, Andy, give us a run through on what are you still using the old Zoom H4? What are you using for the podcast? As I see you holding a mic right this second.
Yes, I've got a Rode Reporter mic.
Is that the one? If you take the top off of that, does that have the wireless go in there, or?
Oh.
Ah, right. Rode. I'm a very big fan of Rode microphones. I've been having a chat to some people from there lately about something that I can't go too much into. But yeah, Rode are a great. I'll take these off real quick. Wear this hat all the time.
Nah, look at that.
And the funny thing is, I actually have another one of these hats that says. What's that?
You knew what mic I had. You were just setting it up. You're like,
corporate shill over here trying to score points.
Absolutely shameless plugs.
But I have another hat which has a B and an N on it. So the hat says my name because. But are you still? Did you find you've developed your as long as your skills and your style have developed, has your gear changed, or do you still use the same kind of stuff? Because your quality has always been pretty top notch, but you're just in the audio format too. You're not doing any video episodes. Is that correct?
Just audio for the time being. To begin with, I was just running a laptop through a Behringer tiny mixer, like a 6-channel mixer with a couple of condenser mics, and it was like you couldn't touch the mics. I had to sit on the table, just don't shake the table, and they sounded horrible. So I think the first 4 or 5 episodes were using that stuff. And then I upgraded to, what I've got now. So I've got a H5 and two Rode Reporter mics. And that's pretty much it. And that's what's been for the majority of the time. And it's only been recently. So I moved back up to Sydney August last year. And so we live smack bang in the middle of the city. It's great. And so I've had people come over to my place to do podcasts already. A couple of I had Cam Knight and Daniel Towns, a couple of Australian comedians, stop by and sit on the couch and talk shit, which is just mad because I'm in the middle of the city, so it's it's not hard for people to get to me. But now in my little office here, I've got a couple of I don't know what you call them. I'm definitely not a tech guy, but what do you call them? Those mic cranes or the mic?
The boom arms.
Yeah. So I've got 4 of them set up, and I'm in the process of upgrading some gear now. So I'm looking at the old Podcaster, and I may look at that.
Podcaster there, Andy?
Sorry, say it again.
What company makes that Podcaster there?
Yeah, I believe it might be that Rode brand.
Rode.
Yeah.
Now, Rode Microphones are an Australian company based in Sydney.
They are.
Oh, yeah.
They are. So,
What great products.
Great products. Just clip this one out for the show reel, guys.
I'll send it to him.
So I think what I'm going to do is one of the goals for this year is to probably not do them all video, but start to do a few video ones here and there. Have people over, sit at the desks here, have it all set up, and try and work out how all that works. Because I'm not a tech guy at all, and that was always a big stumbling block for me. Is that I always say it, I've got the attention span of a goldfish. If something's too hard, I just glaze over and forget about it, just neglect it. So that's why this setup's worked really well for me for so many years. It's so simple. I just plug and play, record, whatever. And now is the next step for me. So I've been doing a bit of research, looking at cameras, how to sync it all up. Probably get a new laptop and get a bit more power. in the guts of that. And
the same boat as you at this exact moment, man. And I'll just quickly add in, thank you so much for accepting to come on today, because I know you're not a huge fan of Zoom stuff, and you've turned down a few before. So like the John Farnham thing, I hope you haven't sullied the waters of all your other people that have asked you to do Zoom by coming on to do with us. But like, as far as that goes with that, the idea of being put off by something, if it's hard, I know where you are, because that's my life, right? So right now we're looking at this video stuff because we've had to do so many via Zoom rather than in person. There's this program called OBS, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Yes. Yep.
OBS is great. And there's one thing that I'm looking for to try to get this DSLR to be my webcam rather than my 13-year-old MacBook, which I'm on right now.
Couldn't tell.
So there's a little thing called the Cam Link. So that's the good thing about this is it can be easy now. You get a Cam Link, which just makes your thing a good camera for your thing. You can get like a dual thing, so you can plug a couple of cameras in. You just hit go on OBS, and then when you're finished, you just cut it between the two things. So we're looking at trying to do something like that in the very near future as well.
Well, I'll definitely be keeping an eye. I think you shared a photo with me a little while ago where you guys were set up pre-corona in person together with all your setup and your gear and everything. And I saved that photo actually in my phone, and I was zooming in, looking at all this stuff. I was doing a bit of stalking, going, what sort of gear they got? So I'll I think we'll have some more chats down the track. Yeah.
Because look, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't be on Whooshka, mate. So that's where we host all our stuff. So we've got to thank you very much for that. Sorry, I basically cut Cody's cheese the whole night, but
fine by me, brother. All good. I enjoyed listening.
We'll probably wrap it up here before the time limit kicks us out again. But yeah, thanks, Andy, so much for coming on today, man. We really appreciate your time and all you've done for the podcasting community in Australia as well, mate. You've really trailblazed it. So,
thanks, Andy.
My pleasure. And guys, thanks so much. And it's weird that I've done anything, so it's pretty cool.
Well, actually, just before we go, I should probably mention we didn't even talk about Lords doing a new album.
Oh yeah, well it's out. So plug.
Oh really?
Plug. Yeah. Oh man.
When did that happen? Did I just miss this?
Oh no, it's been out for a few months now. So you can.
Oh fuck! I'm well behind. I'm really sorry. I normally get a text from you saying, "Hey, grab it."
Oh, okay, my fault. Yeah. All right.
You can take the blame for that.
Properly. No. Yeah. Latest album, Fallen Idols. It's out, and it hit the ARIA charts. Debuted at number 20 for Australian artists, which was ridiculous for a metal band, especially a metal band that plays like old school heavy metal. Yeah. And number 2 in the independent charts, and it's been going really well. So lord.net.au, and go and have a listen if you love a bit of, I don't know, Maiden and Priest and shit like that.
That's it. So, and also check out Andy's podcast, Self-Starter Podcast, Nod to the Old School, and the Manie, Andy Social. So yeah, thanks so much again, Andy, for coming on. That's been episode 14, guys. We will see you all next week.